All right, so you learn about blockchain, you learn about Ethereum. Some of those concepts must have been really difficult to understand. That's expected because it is always difficult to grasp something new at the very first time, but you will get used to it. In this lecture, we're going to try writing some Solidity code using Remix IDE. So this is one of the most popular integrated development environment. So that's what it stands for, IDE. So we're going to use Remix IDE to try out Solidity so that we can learn about Solidity programming language and make our way to write smart contracts. Now, the difference between using online IDE such as Remix and using our own development environment, the main difference is the deployment step, and it is very hard, to be honest. To managing this deployment flow in your local network is a bit challenging. So you can always use Remix to get up and running, and even when you have the local development environment set up, you can always come back to Remix, copy paste your smart contract code and give it a try because it's really easy. You can deploy to the test network, you can try out different functionalities. They have the user-friendly sidebar where you can execute your functions. They appear as a buttons, so you can just use them nice and easily. That means you can interact with your smart contracts without having to build your own front end, the user-facing UI, the website. So you don't have to have that to try out your smart contract functionalities with Remix. So that's a big advantage of using Remix IDE. All right, so we're going to go ahead with Remix IDE. We first try to understand how it works, what it is. So first of all, let's go to open up your web browser and visit Remix IDE. So you can search for Remix IDE. This is the one we're going to use, remix.ethereum.org. All right, so you get this pop-up for the first time, accept, and it shows you a bit of a step-by-step guide here. Click to launch the home tab that contains links, tips, and shortcuts. Next. And here, this is the compiler. You write your code and then you come here to compile your code, or you can just save and that will automatically compile your code. So having a selected .sol file, sol means Solidity. So whenever you create a new file, you give your name, for example, mycontract.sol. So the extension would be .sol. All right. And then this is where you come and deploy your contract. All right, so you can see when you visit remix.ethereum.org for the first time, you get this default contract. It's always there. All right, so you click here. By the way, this is home, and this is where you see the files and folders. You get this sidebar, and this is the main section. So here, inside contracts folder, you have some sample contracts that we can have a look. For example, if you go to storage.so, now in future, they might have different names, they might have different contracts, but what we're trying to understand is the overall appearance of Remix IDE. So you can see here inside the contracts folder, you will write your smart contract, you create a file, you can right click, new file, or you can just click here to create a new file. All right, and then you give your file a name with the .sol extension. So you have a look here and this contract. The first thing you see here is this SPDX license identifier. And then the second line is the Solidity version. This is really important. And when you have the mismatched version, you always get some kind of an error. All right, so these two things will always be on top of your Ethereum smart contracts. So let's try to understand what is the SPDX license identifier and what is this Pragma Solidity version. Then you will be actually writing your contract. All right, so let's try to understand this first. So SPDX license identifier, and you will write it in this fashion, which looks like a comment. The SPDX license identifier is a code placed in source code files that specifies the license under which the code is released. GPL 3.0, which is the license identifier, for example, here you see 3.0, that is an example of a license identifier. indicating that the code is released under the GNU General Public License version 3. The SPDX license identifier is written as a comment on top of Solidity files to make it easy to identify the license under which the code is released. Alright, so that's what this does, and you should always have it on top of your smart contract files. That's the license identifier, and then followed by that is the Solidity version. So as you can see here, before you do anything with your contract, you write the version. Same with other contracts, you can see here, they all have license identifier and the version. Alright, so that's how you write your Solidity version, Pragma, Solidity. Now this one is showing the version is greater than 7 and less than 9. But instead of that, you can just have one version like this as well. But this makes it a bit easier because, like I said, if there is a mismatch of this version, you always get warning, which can be annoying. So greater than 8, less than 9, which will cover all these minor versions between 8, 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, and so on. So this is better. Alright, so this is a version pragma statement in Solidity programming language. It specifies the version of Solidity compiler that should be used to compile the source code, the code that you will be writing. The use of version pragma statements is important in Solidity because the language is evolving and new versions may introduce changes that are not backward compatible. Alright, so this is quite important.